Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is This Week in Thought, episode 10. It's Thursday, March 30th, 2023. And as always, I'm Chunky. In the middle, that's Kassig. Over on the right, that's Redmed. And this week, we're talking about a topic that has been sort of a long time in coming. We've actually sort of hinted at it and discussed it a little bit on several prior episodes. The topic this week is time. And I think we're probably going to talk maybe a little bit first about what we think time is, what that represents. But then in the second half of the discussion, we're going to move into the thing I think that's kind of important to all of us, which is what is the value of time, and why is it so important. So I don't know. Did anybody want to maybe kind of get started with like describing their concept of what time is?
I guess I'll go first. My thought of time is not what you see on a watch or a clock. My thought of time is just basically like the ancients did, the rotation of the sun around the earth, which is obviously false now. But it's just the day, the morning, the noon, the night, and then the repeat of that. So I think the clocks that we go by today are just a restriction on us. So that way, we're forced to do certain things at certain times during the day, but it's more of it doesn't let you spend your time freely.
Yeah, I think definitely there. I think the cycles of time are important to it, and I know I personally believe in something called presentism. I believe that the only thing that exists is the present. The future and the past are constructs of the mind. Maybe quantum probability waves, like Peter Carroll talked about all the years ago. But yeah, I think it's mostly a human construct, and I think that it's not a thing in of itself. It's a relation. It's a relationship between things and how they interact. Which there's a term for it, but I forget. I think it was Hegel, Kant, or pretty much where I line up a little on with my ideas of time.
Do you remember that term by chance that those guys
No,
used?
I'll have to relook it up. Presentism
Okay.
is the main one where I don't believe that the past and the future actually exist. It's the idea of people take the analogy of the string of beads as time. They take that as that's a real conception, and I think that that itself is a thing of the mind. There's not like you're traveling from the past beads. You just hit the present bead and you keep moving into the future beads. There's only one bead. It's a constant. The whole, I view the infinite universe as a bead that's constantly changing and moving, but it's one thing changing states.
Instead of a series of beads in your model, would you say it's a better representation to think of a single bead on a string that you're sliding the bead slowly along the string?
I sort of just envision it as the bead in one place, like sort of just moving around.
So I guess my question is, what's changing? I mean, we're asking a bigger, boy. This is an ontological question, like a fundamental question. But what is change? Like change seems to be integral to the concept of time, but we sort of glossed over it as if we all had the same understanding. And I don't know that we do. Maybe we should talk about what do we think constitutes change? Is there such a thing as change?
Couldn't you say
Well,
that
yeah.
change?
Sorry, go ahead.
Couldn't you say that change is time?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't
kind of
think I
where I'm probably coming from.
I don't think I would. But is that what you're saying, or Red? Is that what you're saying?
Change, I don't exactly know how to describe it, but there is change. I mean, obviously the sun changes position in the sky. The We change positions in our life, whether it's from the kitchen to the sofa in the front room. There is constant change. There's change in the seasons, which is a necessary thing for time to pass us, not pass us by, but pass with us into the future. And I think there is a future. There has to be a past. I don't think they don't exist. I think they do exist. They have to exist. Otherwise, how would we learn from what we have done to prevent that in the future? So I think change is made by ourselves, yeah, at least for our future and past. The change is made by ourselves. The change in the seasons, the change of the day, the change of the weather, that's made by some scientific stuff that I'm not even about to touch on.
Kosik, you seem to have a
Oh
response you
no,
were formulating there.
I'm still formulating it.
Okay.
But yeah, I think the past and the future are something that we create in our mind to be able to exist to have that continuity of time so that we can function really. Because functioning if all of the past and if the past and the future all exist simultaneously, we need a way of filtering it. Think.
Is it fair to say that if change exists, it necessitates time? Meaning, if we acknowledge the existence of change, which is to say differences in anything, the difference in that thing would necessitate some temporal duration, some bit of time during which that change transpired. Really, what I'm trying to get to is a state of non-contradiction, logical non-contradiction.
Oh.
If you say that something exists in two different states simultaneously, to me that contradicts our perceptions. Now, I know you're saying, well, maybe our perceptions are flawed. Maybe that's a filter designed by our brain to protect us from a reality in which all contradictory possibilities exist simultaneously. I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, definitely more so. I think it is a filter that we apply to make sense of the world. And I think that locally things. I think it. I don't know if exists is the right word. Is what I'm thinking. I think that things move in time, but again, I'm not entirely sure. When you get into the quantum realm, the past and the future kind of react with each other in weird ways. Like events in the future, they think can influence events in the past, to where it's all kind of existing simultaneously in like this big weird soup.
I fall back on my Aristotelian causality here, and I say, well, it's a question of the efficient cause. And so when you say we're moving, I say, okay, well, is moving a form of change? And if you acknowledge yes, it's a form of change, okay, does change require time? And if yes, then moving requires time, which means if you acknowledge that we're moving, through the chain of efficient causality, we'd say there must have existed time through which we were moving, because movement, which is change, isn't possible unless there's time. Would be my response, but again, that's a very Aristotelian response. That's a very empiricist response. I will say, for what it's worth, my approach to metaphysical materialism, called physicalism, the only thing that I conceive of as a way to even measure this thing called time that we think exists but that we have no way to prove, is with what's called the arrow of time, which is really to say the second law of thermodynamics, which indicates that the universe is always increasing in entropy. So I would say if we measure the total entropy of the universe, and if it's greater than the total entropy of the universe was at a previous time in which we measured it, we can say that we are in the future relative to that other measurement. For what it's worth, I agree that there's not a static past or a static future per se, meaning they don't exist independently of space. There's only the present that exists in space. But time is a way of tracking, in my conception, the increase in entropy. So time is a way of measuring the universe returning to its state of thermodynamic equilibrium, maximum entropy. And that's the only way I would describe the physical process, and I would say that what we denote as like hours and minutes and seconds is just our way of measuring the progress of increasing entropy.
It seems like it's related to math in a sense that it's related to math. It's related to the idea that there's no math. Math is another map that we use to navigate territory. And you can get to the same argument with math and time. Does it have an objective reality in and of itself, or is it just something that we make up and might have similarities? But I don't think it'll ever be a perfect model of reality. I think it's all kind of subjective, but something that's subjective that we all use.
Well, speaking of that we all use, Kassig, would you at least say that from let's say the local experiential point, like the perspectival experience, the experience that you have as an individual locally now, disregarding whether or not the metaphysical framework supports it or not, would you say that you have a local subjective experience like Red and I do, that there's this sense that time is moving on, that days progress and turn to nights, go through cycles, that you do activities that you can then remember in the past, but you can't remember future activities, and yet you can perform future activities and then later on look back at them and say, oh, I have a memory of something that I call happening in the past.
Sure.
Okay, so
sure.
Can we come up with a term and call it like maybe the colloquial idea of time, the common definition of time, the subjective, the subjectival, the personal conception of time, regardless of the metaphysics. Standard time. Just some term where we agree that we believe we're perceiving the passage of time because we have memories that seem to be forming based on our experiences, and we have a perception of change in the universe around us, which indicates to us that time is real enough that it's a meaningful construct. I mean, can we at least agree on that? Like it's
Sure. I think it's a useful construct. I just, it's not. I have to look up who said the quote, but it's people end up eating the menu instead of the meal, where they put an over reliance on the subjective counting as if it's objectively real, and sometimes that causes issues, especially when the menu and the map are different.
I agree, and that's a cool quote. We have to find that. Put the link
It's
to
the
it.
guy who did the Watchmen and V for Vendetta, Alan Moore.
Oh, okay. Cool. Very cool. I like that. I like that. I agree, and I agree. It's a model. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
useful model, and it seems to be a model that we all are kind of reporting that's similar. We all use kind of a similar model. Whether or not it corresponds to the actual
yeah,
progression of reality is almost irrelevant. I mean, maybe we'll return to it and say, well, it might be
sure.
relevant in certain cases, but the
Yeah,
reality is we think we're passing time by doing activities. And whether we do activities actively or passively sit by and observe the universe around us, we think that time is transpiring. We think that entropy is increasing, that the universe is undergoing motion and activity, and heading towards some destiny, some omega point. It appears.
sure.
So, unless you guys want to kind of go deeper onto just the definition of time, I kind of feel like we have enough of a common definition that we can start talking about the value of it, because I really think that's something. The reason it's such a hot button issue for us is that we assign a ton of value to it. At least I think I do. What do you guys think? Do you tend to do you tend to ascribe a lot of value to time?
Oh yeah, yeah. I value it much more over money, just because you can always make money when you're older. You can't ever get it back.
I agree. Time is a it's a pretty precious commodity. It's more like Kassig said, it's more important than money because you have to have the time to make the money or the time to do what you want or the time to do this or that. It's more important than everything, but it's very dependent on all of those things.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, the value is kind of twofold. First, it's that we don't have a lot of time. Like if you look at a human life, I mean, at the most optimistic end of the scale, you're talking about 100 years, but realistically, probably less than that, maybe 70 years on average, assuming that you die of so-called old age and not some tragic event like an accident or something, which is not a lot of opportunity to have experiences. Yes, you can have some experiences, but there's a lot of requirements for existence that consume a lot of your time, and I think that's worth talking about. The other thing I would say is that it's a physics problem. So it's increasing entropy. You can't manufacture a single moment of time. If you waste time, let's say, doing an activity you really don't want to do or that you regret or wish you hadn't done, whatever, you can't. There's no like magic factory you can go to and stamp out another hour of time to give it back to yourself. It's just lost. It's this commodity. It's like the one commodity that's non-renewable. You can never make more time. You can't preserve time. You can't make more of it. You must use the time to its best purpose in every moment because you're always running out. You're always getting closer and closer to death. You got a finite lifespan and you can't make more life. So
Yeah.
it's kind of that twofold thing is what makes me think it's so valuable. Sorry, Red, what were you going to say?
I don't know. I had something that I was going to say, but I forgot.
Yeah, I think all those points are key to why it's important to us as subjectively. It's there's not enough, and I think that situation would be better if we didn't have to strive so much and waste so much of our time just surviving, and struggling and competing in a system of false scarcity. People are willing to waste their time and do all kinds of weird stuff when they're terrified. So if you want to keep people malleable and wasting their time for you and using their time to make stuff for you, you have to keep people dumb, and you really don't want to bring attention to the time is money concept. You want to keep it in money, which is kind of arbitrary, and it doesn't stress the important. It's like, oh, I made this much and this amount of money an hour versus I wasted half of a day of my life, which will never come back. It puts it in so much perspective. People might actually start making the people that they work for respect their time as much as they demand that that the businesses demand their time is respected. I think that should be reciprocal.
I agree, by the way, but I would take it a step further and say I think everybody's time should be respected because
Sure.
time is the most precious commodity that every person has. I mean, when you're a kid, do you remember like people saying to you, adults typically saying to you, patience is a virtue? Did you ever hear people say that to you?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I always thought, oh, geez, okay, I guess I'm being impatient. And I got older and I realized, no, that's bullshit. Bullshit. Time is the only valuable commodity. Patience is a way for you to convince me to not be pissed off that you're wasting my time, that I can't create more of, I can never get more of. So I would actually say I like am diametrically opposed to the notion that patience is a virtue. If anything, probably impatience is a virtue. Impatience is a virtue. And if you've ever had your time wasted by somebody and you get impatient, I think that's you being angry because the virtue that the value, which is time that you hold so precious, rightfully so, it's necessary to have experiences and you only have a limited amount of it, is being consumed in a way that it can never be replenished. They can't repay you. And I would just say one other thing about that. You mentioned, Kassig, the concept of time as money, and I've heard that said a lot. But I would say that the thing you said before that, which is that time is greater than money, I agree with. Meaning, if somebody were to offer me a ton of money, and this has happened in the past, people have offered me money as compensation for time. And I always say, no, no, it's not worth it to me. I don't keep your money, in other words, because what I want is the thing that you can't make more of, which is time. I'm only going to be this age for a certain amount of time. I'm getting older every moment. And the older I get, as things start to break down, it's tougher and tougher for me to do things. So my time now is even more valuable than my time in the future. Although in the future it'll seem more valuable to me because I'll be closer to death. So at no point is the consumption of another person's time, in my mind, justified. Is that a controversial statement, or do you guys agree with that? I say consumption. I mean consumption, like frivolous consumption of a person's time.
I don't think so. I was just sort of thinking. I was just trying to think of an obvious example, and it seems to follow because I can't think of an example.
So what you mean is they want me to do something, no matter what it is, for some sort of compensation. But if I deem it frivolous, I can take the opportunity to say, no, that's a waste of my time, and do something else. Is that what you're saying?
You're saying you can. I don't know if it's a question of can. I think you should. I think everyone should. And what I'm afraid of is that in the system we have right now, like Kassig was saying, there's a lot of people that feel like they don't have the power to say no. They feel like they have to say, yes, I'll allow you to consume my time to do this activity that I don't want to do because I think I need to do it, let's say, in exchange for a certain amount of resources. Maybe it's a paycheck. Maybe it's an I don't know what. It's the things that they need to continue existing. And they feel like they don't have the power to say no, even though if all things were equal and money were no object, meaning they were financially independent, like rich, that they could just go, no, I'm not going to spend my time on it. They would feel empowered to say no to spending their time in any way they don't want to. And I think most people in our civilization, by most people I mean 99%, they feel like they don't have that authority to say no. Although I would encourage people to say no if someone asks them to spend their time in a way they don't want. Is that controversial? Boy, I don't know.
I think it is controversial to the people who depend on being subservient to other people's time, because they believe that if they put in their time, they get this paycheck so that they can spend their own time on a vacation with their family or by themselves or whatever they want to do. I personally agree with you. I don't think we should have to be. We shouldn't have to do that. We should be able to say, no, I'm not going to do this today because it's a waste of my time, and I'm going to go do something better with it.
I'm with you. I just don't. Where is the controversy? What did I say that was controversial?
Oh, sorry. It's controversial to other people. I think to the people who believe that they need this resource to get this done.
Oh, it's controversial, the idea that they have the right to say no, or that they ought to say no?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Not to me, not to the three of us, but I think to other people it will be.
Time thieves.
Word. You said the word. You introduced the word. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that means, or what that context is, or how you've heard it used?
Yeah, but real quick, there's also a lot of social credit involved with wasting your time. Like, one of the reasons I hate hollow traditions, most traditions and gatherings, is because I'm an introvert and I think it's a horrible waste of time. Now, I've tried to live my life self-sufficiently so I can say, I don't want to do this. I'm not doing it. I don't care. But a lot of people rely and value their social interactions and stuff, which requires, I think falsely, wasting your time for, I don't know what, really. I think it's an extrovert thing.
Traditionalism, man, I think you may have just taken the mantle of poster child of the Gen X philosophy from Redmed over there, because what you just said, I mean, that I think you're sort of describing the spirit of our whole generation, which is my time is much greater than your tradition.
Yeah.
Your tradition is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is if I'm spending my time in the way I want. And if that means that I have to shit on your tradition, well, I didn't like your tradition anyway.
Well, one of the things I don't like about tradition, like I think you should go and review each tradition on its own merits. Keep what you like, get rid of the nonsense. It's led us to the point of near extinction. Following these silly, bad programs, in part, has led us to where we're at now. That's why, even more, we should, when we're getting rid of traditions, we should, use a heavy hand because, it's just bad, outdated programming,
Like
quite
what?
a bit.
Okay, so Kassig, what traditions do you feel are antiquated that we need to change?
One bad tradition that I can think of, it's more of a teaching, like a cultural teaching. It's toxic masculinity. In particular, the idea that I can have one opinion and that's the right opinion, and I can never have another opinion because then that's not. There's one opinion that's right and there's one opinion that's wrong, and you can only be in one, and you can never change unless you agree with the right decision that we believe in. But I think that causes all kinds of conflict and horror, and people get in disagreements and they just can't back down because they have to be right, because that's kind of where their validation is at, which gets into a whole other topic, the idea of how people need validation to function and such. But I think that's kind of outside of the scope of the argument today.
It's interesting you call that toxic masculinity. I would just call that closed-mindedness, because I guess I've met women also who are equally, let's say, zealot-like in their thinking, meaning not
Sure.
open to alternative viewpoints, let's say.
Yeah, closed-mindedness is probably a better way of putting it.
But it sounds like what you're saying, the tradition part of that, the dangerous part of the tradition, is that your identity, not your identity, but your value or your social status is tied up in your inflexibility. Meaning, if you demonstrate yourself as being flexible,
Yes.
you're perceived as being weak. And I think you're saying that's a tradition. That's like just something that society has done historically that we should
Yeah.
do away with.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not opposed to that. That sounds good. It's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that as a tradition. I guess I was thinking of things more like, holidays. Holidays. Well, you said that, like social gatherings or events that you go to on holidays. I was thinking more like, is a holiday the kind of tradition that's good or not? Like, I like having the day off, but I don't like the notion of there's an obligation of, let's say, visiting relatives, for example, or buying presents or exchanging gifts or whatever.
Yeah, I don't like any of that.
Not that I don't like to do it, I just don't like the idea that there's an obligation. That if you don't do it, you're somehow like not fulfilling your responsibility for the holiday. That's what I don't like about it.
Yes. Any of that is things I don't like.
But that's not bringing us to the edge of extinction. You seemed a little more adamant, like, oh, there's some traditions that are dangerous.
Well,
What are
it's
those?
more. It was more the cultural traditions. The way people are raised. Our entire fabric of our society is basically set up for capitalism to allow the 1% to get all the resources. It functions like that, and I think a way to break it down is to build new traditions that mock people wasting our time. There are different ways one could do it, but I think we need to change the cultural norms, which that might be more what I'm talking about than traditions. But we need to change it to where I'm an introvert. I don't really want to go do this. I'm not doing it, and people could have a better understanding of that and not be so inflexible. Oh, that's just the way things are done. Well, the way things are done are not good. We're not in a good spot.
I think that's a Gen Xy response too, because people have said
Sure.
that to me. They go, "Well, that's how we've always done it," and my first response is, "Yeah, you've always done it wrong. Now I'm showing you the right way to do it." Sorry to say, but it's
Yeah.
yeah, generations of failure does
That's
not
yeah.
justify future failure
Yes.
through tradition as its justification.
Yeah, that's the way we've always done it. But it's not right.
Right.
And a lot of times it's like, oh, it's not right, but we just do it because that's just what we do. No. No. I mean, our history, if you look at history, the way we've done things has been not optimal. to the greater majority of people. For big
Right.
people with clubs, it would work out pretty well.
I mean, it's not really on the topic of time, but in a future episode, I'm sure we're going to get around to it. But
Yeah.
what we're talking about, I think, is, well, what's a better value set for society? And one of the things you mentioned, I just want to say it kind of explicitly, is I think maybe the three of us and a lot of people here hold a value that everybody's time is equally valuable.
Yes.
Even the average citizen, the member of the 99%, should be seen as ends in and of themselves, and we should work as a virtue, or we should hold a value all of their time and their experiences. And so a virtuous way to behave, or a virtuous way to shape society, maybe, is to try to promote the enjoyable expenditure of time by the majority of the people. And I'm not talking a 51 to 49 majority where the 51% are sadists and the 49% are the ones being preyed upon. I'm saying that you've got 99% of the people, maybe, who aren't really pleased with the fact that they're spending 40 hours a week working at jobs that are not what they would choose to do if they were wealthy. And again, I say, well, not to denigrate the old system, but let's describe the new system. And in my mind, the new system is automation. If we produce everything, now those 99%ers that were out there doing the menial jobs that they wanted, that they needed to do to get the paychecks they wanted, they don't have to do anymore. They simply have the resources at their disposal. And any work that they want to do is like surplus work, artisan level work for something that is above and beyond the basic needs of life, which are all handled by the automation already. To me, that's like my vision of the future.
So like localized 3D printing, except
among other
like
things.
replicators, really, but more physical replicators than the Star Trek. I think, you're owning the means of production. Would it be like an alchemy machine or something, like the transmuter, maybe?
Yeah, well, I look at it like, there are lots of manufacturing facilities in the manufacturing industry that use human labor. And so as an automation engineer, my goal has always been, like, the holy grail is always 100% of manufacturing should be done by machines, not human. I've looked at a lot of different manufacturing facilities in my career, and it's rare that you find a job that can't be done better, faster, and cheaper by a machine with fewer errors. I mean, true, there are some cases where you need a human to do a judgment call. They have to make a decision where the decision-making process is very difficult to encode in rules. And I would say that there's still a use for human supervisors. Okay, everyone, we had a couple of technical difficulties there, but right before it cut out, the video cut out, we were talking a little bit about just manufacturing. And I was saying that, for me, having spent a career in automation engineering, I think the holy grail is to try to automate as many what I would call menial, repetitive, physical, manual labor jobs as possible, to free up the time for those people to be able to pursue things that are more interesting to them. But right as I said that, I think both of you guys had other ideas that you wanted to follow on with that.
My question is kind of not twofold, but it's a two-part question, I guess. If we do get to a fully automated system, can we? I don't know. I don't know how to say this. So if we get to the two-part, never mind, hold on. If we get to the fully automated system, the people that you've eliminated the jobs for, what do they do, and how do they not waste time? Because if they have nothing to do, is that not wasting time? Because we can't get to a fully automated system and still have something for these people to do if we don't have money to support them somehow, or have them support themselves.
Yeah, I agree. So what the question you're asking, I think, begs a bigger question, which is, I'm making this assumption that everybody has things they would rather do with their time than go to a job. That most people, in other words, if they won the lottery, would spend their time differently than going to the job that they went to before they won the lottery. That may be an invalid assumption. Maybe, like you said, there are some people out there where they go, man, doing my manual labor job is the thing that gives my life meaning. Well, in that case, yeah, my preference would be to train them to do other things. And the first thing I would train them to do is to realize that their value as a person isn't tied up in their productivity. That they're a valuable person regardless of whether they make anything or provide any service. And that their value is all tied up in their ability to have experiences. So you say, well, what would they do? How would they spend their time? Well, if everything's automated and everybody's got universal basic income, they don't need to work to earn the money. They'll have a sufficient amount of resources to do what they want. The question is, what would they want to do? Well, my first recommendation would be go on vacation. Go see things. Go explore the world. Go, vacation to different places. Travel a little bit and see what piques your interest. If you're the kind of person that says, well, I don't know what I'll do now that my job has been automated away, travel. Build things. Build things as a hobby. That's what I like to do. I like to do carpentry, really any kind of craft work, just because that's interesting to me. I get enjoyment out of the process of constructing things. Yes, I do that for the work that I do professionally to make money, but I also do that as hobbies in my spare time just because I get enjoyment out of it. I don't know if that's universally true. There may be people that are like, I don't like to craft anything. But my guess is there's some hobby or some interest that they have that's not just making things or going to a job and doing a manual labor job that they would find an enjoyable way to spend their time. Maybe not. Maybe it's worth talking about that.
I don't know if this exists, but it would be funny. Someone who loves meetings, like the biggest time waster ever. Like, what do you do? Oh, I like going to meetings and planning meetings and having meetings. That's my jam. It's like, I don't get it, but, if you wanted to have meetings by yourself, that's great. Go and do that, and that's wonderful. But stop wasting my time. And I think it's if we do the full automation, it's everybody. It's people's own choice what they want to do with their time. To me, I think that's the goal, to free everybody from the toil of having to do things.
Well, you're making a joke about meetings, and I get it. I can appreciate that. If you've ever been in a meeting that you didn't appreciate the topic of, I think you're going to appreciate that joke. But there's something to be said about the virtue of meeting. I mean, you could argue that these podcasts that we do are a form of meeting. It's not the meeting you think of, but it is a form of meeting. And I would encourage those people that have extra time on their hands because their job's been automated. If they've got universal basic income and they can spend their time doing what they want, have meetings like this. Meet with your friends. Get on video conferences. Record it. Make YouTube videos. Why not? What's the downside to it? I guess.
Yeah. If you enjoy it.
If
you're not wasting.
I got nothing.
What do you think?
As far as that goes, but I do have another question. If everything becomes automated and the amount of jobs decrease because of the automation, but we've still got the ability to do what we want. If I want to sit on a bench and stare at a tree, you might think that would be wasting time. Is that wasting time? Is that wasting my time?
If you enjoy it, no.
Yeah, I can't remember who the quote is, but somebody said, time how is it? Time that you wasted doing something you enjoyed wasn't wasted, or time that you spent doing something you enjoyed wasn't wasted. So, waste is really a term that only has meaning in the subjective sense. Is it wasteful to me? Meaning, was the time spent doing something that is not what I wanted to do with that time? So for me, if somebody wants to sit and look at a tree, great. I want them to have the ability to make that choice and go, all my basic needs of life are taken care of. I can have food, clothing, and shelter no matter what I do. And what I want to do right now is to sit here and look at a tree. Good. Let's build a system where they can do that without the penalty of losing their job because they're not showing up to work and being productive.
Okay.
Does it seem like I'm like dreaming up some ideal, some like unrealistic ideal? Or
no, I mean, this is the what you're talking about is the ideal that you've been talking about for these last 9 or 10 episodes. I agree with them, but I'm just trying to define different things or different parts of that ideal.
Do you think it's unrealistic, or?
It's not unrealistic, but it's not going to happen tomorrow.
I think that there will be opposition if it becomes wildly successful, because the people, the 1% like having the people making lots of money for them. And if all those people stop, they're going to try to use what leverage they have to make us come back. Because I still think that there are certain aspects of society who just want their serfs back. They're like, the 1300s was awesome and we need to get back there. And I think that needs to be countered, preferably by providing such a better example that people will flock to it, like, look at how awesome our stuff is. Or you could be working in some factory.
I agree with setting a better example. I think we're kind of doing that, and I think we should pursue that. But in terms of it being harmful to, let's say the 1%, as you describe it, assuming that the 1% like owns the facilities that used to be manned by human workers but are now manned by automation, they're still the ones that would benefit in a capitalist sense from the materials being produced and sold. I mean, I guess I'm not talking about the pure ideal of post-economic society. I'm talking about the intermediary step of universal basic income. I'm talking about the thing Andrew Yang was describing where we say, well, we're going to take a good chunk of money and give enough to every person, every citizen, that they have the basic needs of life met. And then anything they want over and above it, they can choose to work for that in whatever way they want and then spend it on what they want. Well, what I'm saying is some people will go, just like what Redmed was saying, they'll go, yeah, I'm bored. I'm going to go do something. I'm going to make something, artisan stuff, and they're going to sell it, which will give them some surplus income, which then they can go spend on things like luxury goods, let's say, which are the things being made in the big manufacturing facilities, the automated manufacturing facilities, meaning that the owners of the big manufacturing facilities can still generate wealth that way. They just won't have human laborers doing their work. They'll have machines doing their work. And so to answer your question, Cassig, I don't know, let's say that a 1%er who owns a big factory would care whether it's manned by humans or machines, as long as the revenue flow is still there. In fact, I would think they would want machines just because machines don't get sick. Machines do the process repeatably. They don't make judgment calls. They don't take breaks.
I think you kind of have to, you kind of got to have the basic income at the same time you do the automation. Because it'd be very easy just to go, we got the robots now. Have fun starving.
Well, I think you're right, but I think it's going to happen not exactly simultaneously, but I think one will trigger the other. As automation increases and becomes widespread, there will be layoffs. So there will be a glut in the job market, a bunch of unemployed people. The problem is that those unemployed people won't have any income, so they won't have disposable income to spend on the products being made by the manufacturing facilities. So at that moment, it'll be necessary to put money back into the hands of the consumers so that they can buy the products being made by the machines to keep the proprietors of the industry still having their revenue stream. In other words, if their revenue stream dries up, it'll be now in the interest of the 1%, let's say, to give universal basic income to the 99%, so that they can spend it to buy the products made by the machines. Do you think that's like I'm describing it as a well-oiled machine? I think it's dependent.
Maybe,
but
I think understanding processes like that is a good step because you kind of know what to look out for. It's like you're setting up guideposts and using that to make what-if decisions.
We should take a step back here. I introduced that concept. I had thought about it and read about it long before Andrew Yang started talking about it the last couple election cycles, but he was really sort of giving a voice to it, like on a big stage, and I love that. I never asked you guys, do you guys agree with the concept of universal basic income? Do you like that? Do you think that's a good thing to move toward?
Yeah, absolutely. Letting another human being starve, it's unconscionable. Who could do that? Oh, I need another Lamborghini. I don't care if these people all died. For that happen, that's fine. It's just repugnant. And if there was if the culture was not set up to celebrate evil being, selfishness and all of that, I think that most logical people just go, no one wants to do that. It just comes down to that there's a very small segment of society ruining it for everybody else. And I keep going back to it because I think that they have the power to immediately do the change. I mean, if we want change, we're all going to have to come together to do it. They have the power. They're using it to do the opposite of what needs to be done, to preserve everything. And we got to figure out a way to stop that.
Well, we've talked about it before. I think we got to set the example. We got to build the model and set the example. I think we're doing it. We're doing the early stages of it now. But I'm sorry, Red, you didn't answer. Do you agree that universal basic income is like a thing we should move toward, or not?
The idea of it is very enticing. The transfer to it from what we are right now, I mean, it's not going to happen anytime soon. Like Kassig said, there's going to be so much pushback from anybody who's making money off of the people that are under them. Because if I take and get rid of 5 people and replace them with 5 machines, well, who am I going to, how am I going to make the money off of those 5 people, even though I pay them, but they still have to buy this thing from me, so I'm still going to make money off. I don't think they're going to give it up easily.
What do you think
I
might
don't
be
know
a
if what
good...
I said makes sense.
It does. What do you think might be a good, like, how do I say this? Like a catalyst, like a way to start that transition? Do you have any ideas? And you go, this is like the first step, or the how we get on that path toward universal basic income.
I do. I really don't like this. I don't like saying this and don't want to say it, but a global catastrophe.
Oh, yeah,
I
right.
mean, honestly, that's what's gonna. I mean, I don't want to use 9/11 as an example, but I will. Something like that of a global scale where you have to, or even the pandemic, things get shut down because of this situation. It's too dangerous to go outside, so we now have to automate this thing. So that's going to be the catalyst
I
to do it.
I hate to do that because I hate to leave our progress up to, let's say, random acts of fate. But and I'm gonna make, I guess, probably the most controversial statement on the podcast so far. I don't see if you guys agree with it. The pandemic has been bad for a lot of reasons. It's caused a lot of suffering, probably a lot of needless deaths, certainly a lot of suffering even for those that haven't died. It's caused like loss of wages, and I mean it's had a social impact. People can't, they can't congregate the way they used to. It's taken some of that personal element out of it. But man, just what Red was saying there are some benefits that came out of it too. I mean, again, I'm speaking as an introvert, so I know there's bias here. One of the benefits is look how rapidly our telecommunications infrastructure has been upgraded. Look how quickly everybody was able to get video conferencing, audio video with multiple people. I mean, these are technologies that, yeah, they've been around a while, but they were never in widespread use. There was never the infrastructure really to support it. But the pandemic created the need for us to build a new level of resilience in our communication infrastructure that we've never seen before. And so you could argue that we're better off from a technological standpoint having gone through the pandemic than we would have been without it. I'm not saying it's necessarily justified because, yeah, it created a lot of suffering, a lot of death. A lot of death may have been unnecessary, but that's neither here nor there. That's all speculation. But it caused a lot of death. However, there's a benefit that we got. Or we're realizing we're living the benefit right here, having conversations like these and producing this content. I don't know that we ever would have done this. First of all, because had the pandemic never happened, I doubt that we ever would have thought to get on video conferences and record it. We would have still gotten together like we used to and had our discussions, but not in this medium. I mean,
Yeah,
can we agree that there's a technological value that the pandemic inadvertently produced as a byproduct?
Oh, sure.
definitely.
And you could say that pretty much with all things. Some would say that the capitalist society can be fixed a little bit, but it's also raised the standard of living for a lot of desperately poor people. And I just think that with all things that should be mentioned. There's unintended negatives and positives for all things, really.
Um,
And as long as you have contingencies for dealing with such things, one can go forward. As to what Red was saying, I think nothing's really going to change until there's a major ecological disaster. I suspect it'll be the extinction of an important species like chickens or pigs. But I think that it's going to take something like that because the increase of the storms, people just blow it off, it seems like. But, oh no, there's bird flu and all the chickens are gone. Might have more. And I wish large scale human change could happen without stuff like that. I'm skeptical of that idea.
okay, so I was going to say, instead of waiting around for the next catastrophe as the catalyst for improvement, I wonder if there are things that we can do. And like you said, it's difficult. It's difficult to overcome the inertia on a large scale, but on the small scale, I mean, if we design the example and we show people just how it can be done, like from the philosophy through the practice, can we is that a catalyst? Can we like start the engine of change by demonstrating on a small scale a better way of living? I'm asking,
Oh,
do you guys think that's possible?
yeah. And, I think we're going to have to take steps to preserve it, just because I think there will be opposition. Yeah, and I do believe the best course is to show, all of these methods to live outside of the monetary system as much as one can.
Red, you were shaking your head no.
Because you're going to run into Billy Bob Joe down in the boot heel of bumfuck West Virginia or wherever. You know what I mean? And I don't mean any disrespect to anybody who lives there, but you're going to run into the people who have lived a certain way traditionally for 100 years because their family lived this way, and it's in a cabin without basically with the only reason they have money is to get the things that they can't make or can't grow or anything like that. So I don't think you're going to be able to talk them into, you're going to have a very, very tough time talking them into a system that doesn't require money to do stuff. I don't think, I hate saying this, but I don't think many people will understand it the way that the three of us do. There's a portion of the population out there that won't understand what we would try and do and how it would benefit them. Because they know if I go make coal or if I go dig coal out of this mine, I get paid so I can go buy my stuff to get my 7 children brought up, get them clothes, get them shoes, whatever. I don't think they'll understand that I don't have to go dig coal to get shoes for my kid.
I think what we're doing is trying to help with that. If, describing it now, this is how we're doing it through the podcast, like how things should be set up. I think once it starts getting set up, that example will bring more people to it. And once there's enough people that it's self-sufficient and can defend itself, the people who are reluctant to change, they're welcome to live their lives how they want, so long as they don't try to pollute our portion or be violent. And I think hopefully we can figure out non-violent ways of doing that. But I think self-preservation might be something that needs to be looked at as well.
We can definitely find a non-violent way of doing that. And I kind of want to step back a little bit. I don't think there will be very much resistance to it if we start with the next generation in that family. If we start with the next generation, the 7-year-old, and say, this is how the world's going to be. This is what's going to happen. This is blah, blah, blah. Instead of going with the generation that is digging in the coal mine, where he might not completely comprehend and understand what we're trying to do because he's been brought up in the family tradition of this is how we live.
I think part of that's been happening. I think people on the left have been trying to use the schools to broaden people's perspective. And I think it's working. I mean, if you look at the ideas that our generation even has compared to like generations before that, I think there's a large improvement over people's ideas. And I think it was largely taught through the education system. And we need to keep that up. Open people's minds, whether they want them opened or not.
I'm just aware that all of a sudden we're kind of running low on time. I wanted to mention that listening to what you guys are both saying, I agree with points that you're both making. Like, I think sort of the ideals that Kassig is describing, I admire those and I want to aspire to that. But the realities that Redmed said about there being a lot of, let's say, inertia, a lot of resistance to change, traditionalists, just people that say, I can't even imagine this new thing that you're showing us. To me, let's say the golden mean between the two is the commune, because the commune on the inside embodies the ideals, but externally it looks just like a corporation. So it would fit in seamlessly in the old capitalist system, and I don't think it would rub anybody, the traditionalists or anyone, the wrong way, because from their perspective they would say, well, you guys are just a corporation. You just pay your taxes and you make things, and we just transact business, and I'm just a consumer or a business partner. So I feel like that's kind of the path between the two extremes that might allow it to move forward. I don't know if that's what we want to talk about going forward, is more of the design of the commune.
Yeah. I mean, I think we, a little bit more talking about values and stuff like that. But I think we're easily at the point, because I think we all kind of, even though we come from different ideological backgrounds, I think that we're all pretty much in agreement on a course of action. Make a commune, or on paper at least, and then hopefully people will pick it up and replicate it.
Right. That's
including us. I hope I can pick it up and replicate it.
I would love to also. I agree. I'm sorry, I'm watching the clock here and we're kind of running low on time. Does anybody have any kind of last thoughts they want to talk about, either the topic of time or about what's coming up?
Just real quick, I think when the companies make goods that are designed to wear out, that's a huge waste of time sink. Planned obsolescence. Because you have to have people in the factories constantly making more widgets that are designed to break. So, if you make things that last, you have to waste less resources making them and time making. And I think that is part of the whole process. Getting rid of planned obsolescence. It saves resources, saves time. It hurts profit, but cool.
But again, if you're automating everything, your profit margins should go through the roof.
Yeah.
In theory. So.
I think time is definitely looked at by the corporations as something that we don't have. We shouldn't have. I think we need to take it back. I think there's other countries around the world that when they start a job, they get like 3 or 4 weeks of vacation. Whereas, most companies in the U.S. give you one to start out. So I think I think it's time that we try and take our time back from them.
Heck yeah. Because it's not their time.
It's ours.
They don't own us.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, sorry to do this, but we're just about out now, so we got to call it. That was episode 10, everyone. Thanks for those that participated, as always, and thanks for everybody that watched. It's going to be now a couple weeks here. We've got a backlog of about 4 episodes that we need to get edited and published. We're going to do that hopefully over the next couple weeks. And then we'll be back in mid-April to record episode 11. We haven't settled on a topic yet, so that'll be a surprise when that comes out. I think that's about it. I will say, nice shirt, Red, and go Cards. It's opening day today. I forgot it was opening day. I'm still in hockey mode. Still not done with the hockey season yet. Can't think about baseball yet.
This is more of my wife said, "Oh, you're gonna wear this today." Okay.
That's good. That's right. Oh, it's opening day. Cool. All right. Well, anyway, on that note, thanks everybody. That was a good one.
All right.
See everybody next time.
Have a good one.
Have a good one.
See ya.
See ya. The opinions expressed in the preceding podcast are not necessarily those of the individuals who expressed those opinions. The creators and participants of this podcast hereby absolve themselves of any and all liability for damages that might arise as a result of the viewing, hearing, or acting upon the ideas expressed in this podcast. By watching or listening to this podcast, you hereby agree to defend, indemnify, and hold harmless the creators and participants of this podcast from any and all claims, demands, damages, or liabilities resulting from the experiencing of the contents of this podcast.